My name is Jeremy Walton, and I want to talk about why I bought the red Komodo and Canon R3. Let's go! What I want to do is give you a handful of reasons why I decided to buy these two cameras when deciding to upgrade from my original two-camera setup. At the end of this video, I will also give you a quick rundown of how I rigged these cameras up, with some helpful tips if you're in the market for a new camera, especially the Komodo because you have a few options. I do want to mention this is my setup for my situation. Your situation can be totally different, but I think the same principles apply. Take what you need from this video and get to it. My original setup for years included two cameras. I had the Panasonic GH5 and GH5s. I looked at these two cameras as video cameras, but the GH5 leaning a bit towards photography, so it was used for any photos I needed, and the GH5s being used solely for video with its dual native ISO and no IBIS. I basically applied the same setup towards my upgrade. I won't cover all the features, plenty of info online. I just want to cover the features that made me buy the Canon R3 and the red Komodo. Let's start the video off with the video specs of these two cameras. When we look at sensor size, we know the R3 is a full frame sensor and the Komodo is a Super 35. Why did I choose that? Well, I didn't. That's what the cameras had in my price range. I'm also not going to get into price. These cameras fit my budget, and at that price point, this is what you get. Since the R3 will be my B camera or my hybrid camera that takes photos as well, I knew I wanted full frame. A couple other reasons I will get into, but when I'm shooting photos, I want a full frame camera. For more info on why, check out my video, Does Size Matter? Full frame versus micro four thirds, and you'll see a list of reasons that helped me make my decision. My A camera will be the Komodo, and it'll do the majority of my video work. It's a Super 35 sensor, and I'm good with that. I wouldn't mind a full frame sensor, but we all know that's a big price jump. For video, Super 35 is still a pretty common standard and looks great. Now, when we talk about video resolution, a big selling point when looking at these two cameras is they both shoot 6K and they both shoot in RAW. Yes, there are slight differences, but when I'm trying to balance two cameras that are different, even different brands, the closer specs I can get, the better. Even if I were to buy just one of these cameras, filming in RAW is where I'm at today and something I wanted with my upgrade. When I'm shooting a two-camera setup, record times are also an issue. Again, for me, the closer I can get the two cameras in sync, the better. If I shoot Canon RAW Lite with a 512 gig card, I get about an hour and 28 minutes, and if I shoot LQ mode with a 512 gig card with the Komodo, I get around an hour and 17 minutes as well. Another plus when picking these two cameras. The last topic for video specs is megapixels. The R3 has 24.1 megapixels and the Komodo has 19.9. Since these two cameras are mostly going to be used for video, the megapixel count on the lower side is fine. Most cinema cameras have a lower megapixel count, and having better low light performance is more important in video than megapixels. With the R3, for me, 24 megapixels is just fine for photo work as well. I don't crop a whole lot or print large photos. Even if I did, I think I'd still pick up the R3 because of one important item, which we'll talk about next. Real quick, I know you're thinking with these camera specs, how does the image from each camera match up? Well, that's going to be a topic for another video that I'm working on. Stay tuned. Okay, let's get into something that makes these cameras stand out, and that's the global shutter. Right off the bat, we have the Komodo, and I think having a global shutter on this camera was a huge selling point, or just a plus based on what this camera was designed for, like a crash cam, or what I really want to get into is strapping this thing to a drone. If you watch some of my videos in the past, I really like strapping my camera to anything that moves, so a global shutter is a no-brainer. Sticking with the theme of trying to match these cameras with their features, the Canon R3 has a stacked CMOS sensor, which technically isn't a global shutter, but it helps reduce the effects of a rolling shutter by having a much faster readout. Just like the Komodo, whether it's for photos or videos, my R3 is always on the move. Like the time I took it on a roller coaster. Have a look at the Canon R3 roller coaster review to see the results. This was just another item on the list that really went over well with me when deciding on the cameras I needed and wanted. No matter what kind of action I want to film or take photos of, with these two cameras, I'll be covered. Something that really sealed the deal for me when I wanted to upgrade is the native RF mount. Both of these cameras use the RF mount. When I started looking for new cameras, I also had to factor in buying new glass. It just so happens Canon released a line of new lenses, and knowing how long the EF glass lasted and actually is still being used today, I had confidence buying into the new RF system. What this meant was I could use all the new glass with both cameras and not have to worry about any kind of adapters. I'm not a huge fan of adapters. They do have their place, but less is more for me. The peace of mind knowing I'll have this glass for years to come and I can interchange them with a native mount was the icing on the cake. I think Red even putting the RF mount on their new lineup of cameras really says a lot. And for me, if I want to rent a V-Raptor for certain projects, I have glass that'll work. Or if I want to rent some cinema glass with a PL mount, I can make that work. Some of this might sound insignificant, but when you start adding up all these features, it made my decision much easier. One other detail I have to mention when deciding on these two cameras is pretty basic, and that is the autofocus. I will admit, I was never a fan of autofocus. I even made videos about it, but just like most things, it keeps getting better and better. Enough to where I can't really hate on it. Yeah, people will hate on it, but it's come a long way. For photos, yeah, I'm using Canon's autofocus. It just works and can do a better job than me trying to do it manually. Could I do it? I'm pretty confident, but I'd bet I'd miss more shots. For video, it's the same story. While I do set it in manual at times for specific reasons, a lot of the work I do just makes more sense to keep it in autofocus. There are times when it gets confused or misses something, but understanding its limitations, understand the shot you want to get and you'll be good. Or you can throw it in manual and there you go. Now we have autofocus in the red Komodo, which makes life a bit easier. It's not perfect, but I'm guessing it'll just keep getting better. It's there when I need it, which I have used it a handful of times. Combine that with the RF mount, the Canon RF glass, the R3 and Komodo are a great combination. The last thing I'm going to cover is how I rig the camera. I'll start with the R3. This is it. I don't do anything special with this camera. If I'm pulling it out for photos, I keep it simple. Maybe a mic if I'm doing a vlog. Throw it on a tripod for everything else. I want to keep it simple, so for now, it stays like this. For the Komodo, it's a different story. Let me build this out really quick before I give you a rundown. And there you go. Nothing too crazy. It's not complete though. I have been thinking about what handle to go with. It's not a must, but I've been considering my options right now. If you have a go-to handle, leave a comment below. In the back is my core SWX battery plate with the Nano Micro 98 watt-hours battery. There are a few reasons I went with this setup. I do believe gold mount is a more secure connection and it has a slimmer profile than using the V-mount version of this setup. More importantly, I went with this battery because I knew I was going to run an external monitor and wanted a 2-pin LEMO cable to power it. Speaking of the monitor, this is the Small HD Cine 7. I really enjoy using this monitor. We have an SDI in and out, HDMI if you need it, and this is the Red Komodo camera control hookup. It's great having the camera control on my monitor since I'm using it for the waveform, focus assist, and false color. Adding camera control makes sense and I haven't had any issues so far. Plus, it's really user-friendly. Having a 7-inch monitor, I can't complain. It's the perfect size and using 2 batteries usually gets me through the day. To make all this work, we have to talk about the cables. I want to thank and give a big shout out to Ignite Digi. If you're looking for high quality cables with great customer service, then check this company out. Just keep in mind they are located in Australia. I know this because I decided to take the plunge and order some custom cables. Because I know what I'll be using this camera for, I know I don't need the extra length. Plus, for both these cables, the SDI and LEMO, I wanted a 90-degree on one end and a straight end on the other. If you want a similar setup, both of these cables are 10 inches long, not including the ends. The quality is fantastic and Ignite Digi really made sure I got what I wanted, and I'm a happy customer. I do have the GDU monitor mount, which I like, but because of the size of the LEMO right angle end, it limits how far I can push the monitor forward. Hasn't been an issue, but it's something I'll have to deal with at some point. The camera control cable came with the package, could be shorter, but I make it work. And that's the setup I have at the moment. It may change over time, but if you're looking for a few options, these are what I recommend to get you started. I covered a lot in this video, but definitely not everything. We could dive deeper into a lot of topics that might just get overwhelming. In my experience, there's usually a few key features that get someone to buy, and these were some of those features that sold me on this 2-camera setup. Well, there you have it, why I bought the Red Komodo and Canon R3. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hit that like button because there's definitely more on the way. Subscribe so you don't miss out. Leave a comment if you want to. Until next time, it's a wrap.